beginnings and always. Hang on, let me close the door. Oh, crap. Okay. You perched at the kitchen island, whiling away the minutes until your sister joined you downstairs. There was quite an adventure planned today. Lee was coming down near the Sunset Bird area as part of what she called a little trip. Apparently, she thought how nice it would be to go on a private boat trip this summer to celebrate graduation and everything. What might have been an idle dream for most people turned into reality in Lee's hands. You'd been invited along for the ride by your best cousin. It was kind of insane she could make that happen. You were eagerly anticipating the adventure. It'll be great to see her. The idea of being on a ship worried you a little. You were pretty mellow about it. It'll be great to see her. You got to chat to Lee over the phone regularly, but it wasn't the same as hanging out in person. This visit was an unexpected treat. You weren't the only one who was heading out on the trip. Liz was coming, of course. Your moms had been invited, but hadn't been able to find the time to squeeze it in. And so the trip would only involve the kids of the family, a term that had stuck despite all three of you being adults now. Mom would have joked about cramping your style, but there was apparently plenty of room on the ship. Lee had been more than happy for you and Liz to bring other friends along if you wanted. But the trip out to Sunset Bird, then even further out to where Lee and the boat would be, just wasn't feasible for most people. Not many folks lived close by. There was naturally one person around who would always be there for the ride, Cove. You were just about to meet up with him outside. Lee had been glad when you'd told her he'd be able to come along today. Just as you were thinking about your cousin and her plans for the day ahead, your phone sprang to life. Glancing at the display, you saw that the incoming call was from Lee herself. You answered it without pause. Hey!
Hi!
Hi! She dove straight into the topic, the trip meetup. You could hear the thrill of excitement in her voice.
I'm here now, and everything is all set. All you've got to do is show up, and we'll be off. Woo!
She spoke quickly, animated by anticipation. Hooray! You echoed her enthusiasm.
Great! Can't wait to see you.
Liz and Cove
are definitely still on board too, right?
Yep.
Wonderful! There's still a bit of time before you're due to set off. Is there anyone you want to stand a last-minute invite to? No need to keep the guest list sparse now. It's not like we'll be bumping into anyone else to join in when we're out in the middle of the ocean.
Well, there's this new guy in the neighborhood I like. There's a new guy around. I think you might like him. No one really comes to mind that I want to be there. No one really comes to mind that I'd want to be there.
Okay, just being safe.
Talk to you later.
I'll let you go. I have to if I want to see you here in the flesh.
She uttered the last words dramatically, making them sound more like a threat than a statement. Laughing, you shook your head. Lee chuckled along down the phone. Bye, Lee.
Bye.
Now that your attention was free, you looked over to the stairs to see if Liz had emerged yet, but there was still no sign of her. You figured you might as well go out and see if Cove was ready in the meantime. Liz would catch up, you were sure. You called at the stairs to let her know the plan. You sent her a text on the updated plan. You grabbed your phone one more time to let her know where you'd gone. With that, you hopped off the chair and headed out the door. A sunny day greeted you. Shielding your eyes with a hand, you admired the sky. It looked like good weather for heading out on the water. That was something. You heard your name called and turned automatically. Cove was the source of the call. He was standing halfway between his own house and yours. He waved at you as he walked over. You waited for him to join you. You took a step in his direction. You ran over to him. You ran over and threw your arms around him. You tore across the street and pounced on him, wrapping him tightly into a hug. The wind of gas you knocked out of him turned into a chuckle halfway.
Hi. Hi, Cove. Ready to go?
Cove nodded easily, blinking languidly in the sunlight. Then his mouth curved into a gentle smirk.
First jet skis, now a boat? What aquatic transportation device is up next for us? My money's on a submarine.
You laughed. It'd been an adventurous summer for sure. Cove grinned, pleased that he'd amused you. Cove glanced away, chewing his lip with consternation.
Is it really okay for me to come?
Of course. You don't even have to ask, right? Cove rubbed the back of his neck, frowning as if trying to work it out for himself.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. This is a really ritzy trip. And Lee's your cousin, not mine. I mean, the two of us, me and Lee, are friends, maybe. But it's not like we've ever hung out on our own. I'm kind of worried I'm gonna be out of place.
There is no way you'd be left out, Cove. She wants you there, I promise.
Cove, you're so difficult.
Don't you want to go on a boat? You looked at him concerned. There is no way you'd be left out, Cove. She wants you there, I promise.
Okay, you're right.
Cove managed a small smile. The worry hadn't lifted from his rigid shoulders, but you could tell that he was attempting to project a little more confidence.
I'm gonna go. Don't worry.
Good. You were satisfied with that. Only a minute or two more passed before the door to your house finally opened, Liz framed within it like a portrait. Unlike you, she had no need to shield her eyes with a hand in order to protect them from the sun's bright rays, as her hat was performing the job admirably. Spotting you, she headed straight over. She smiled warmly at you and Cove as she approached. With that, your little group piled into the car. It had been decided in advance that you all be heading over in Cove's car. Then you set off for the journey down the coast to where you'd be meeting Lee. You wound down the California shoreline with sparkling ocean waters on one side and craggy cliffs on the other. The world blurred by until eventually you made it safely to the large harbor. It was as far grander scale than the one near Mr. Holden's shop. Boats 2, 3, even 5 times larger could fit. Liz took charge from there, calling up your cousin to guide you the rest of the way. Lee did her best to explain where precisely the boat was docked. Given that she was doing it without seeing where you were, and that it was an area she was only slightly familiar with herself, she did a pretty good job. It took a bit of fumbling, a little retracing of steps, as your cousin and your sister had different definitions of orange. That was rusty brown, Liz had protested. But before too long, you heard her voice calling you, not from the phone in Liz's hand, but over the wind rolling off the ocean. Searching for the source of sound, you found her on the prow of a ship, jumping into the air and waving frantically for your attention. You'd arrived. Lee dashed from the bow over to the gangway where you boarded one by one.
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad you got here okay.
You could tell, even if she'd said nothing, her bright grin as she saw you all spoke loud and clear.
Hi, Lee.
You smiled at her, you waved, you gave your cousin a high five, you squeezed her in a side hug. You gave her a full-on hug. You squeezed her in a side hug. Snaking one arm around her shoulders, you pulled her against you. Lee wrapped an arm around your waist and hugged you back. After greeting you, Lee turned to look over the faces of the others who had been joining you on your ocean voyage.
Lee, thanks again for taking us on this lovely trip.
Cove hovered awkwardly behind you and your sister. Even with Liz's broad sun hat, he was too tall and the group too small to hide effectively. He made fleeting eye contact with Lee, then looked away. Hi, thank you for letting me come. The boat is cool. He chuckled nervously. Lee smiled, entertained by his bumbling phrasing.
Hi, Cove.
She giggled as she spoke, unable to hide her amusement. Cove lowered his head. You patted his arm reassuringly. You stood in front of him like a shield. You couldn't help but smirk at his reaction. You rubbed the bridge of your nose. You folded your arms. You patted his arm reassuringly. We're all gonna have a good day. You don't have to laugh at him. Cove's little game of hide and seek is pretty funny. We're all gonna have a good day. Cove smiled weakly at you. His face flushed. You could tell that he appreciated your show of support, but was still embarrassed about needing the help. The floor seemed to give beneath you. As Lee whooped with delight, you realized that the ship had pulled out into the water. It had been so steady while it was moored that you temporarily forgotten you weren't on solid ground. Now, as the boat rocked beneath your feet, there was no doubt you were truly setting sail. The little group dissipated into chatter or headed over to the railings to watch the ocean. You were ruffled by the breeze, which seemed stronger out on the water than it was back on the shore. The floor continued to rise and fall. You couldn't predict what it would do next. It was refreshing. You were curious about how this trip would go. You felt unsure but tried to ignore it. It was scary. You were hit with nausea. You were curious about how this trip would go. As you let your surroundings truly sink in, you thought today was shaping up to be memorable. You were glad that you'd been able to join Lee on this trip.
We can really get the party started now.
How wonderful. What did you have in mind?
Well,
the word hung in the air as your cousin stalled. It was clear that she didn't have something immediately in mind. Cove's eyes sparkled as he piped up. Can we get out of the boat? Like, go swimming around in the deep ocean? Sometimes you'd swear that boy was part merman, the way he was continuously drawn to the water, but Liz immediately quashed the suggestion.
No.
Her tone left no room for debate.
Sorry, it's not that kind of boat trip. It isn't supposed to stop anywhere. If someone did end up off in the water, the captain would call the Coast Guard on us.
Cole's shoulders slumped at this resounding rejection. Alright. That's disappointing. Suck it up, Cove. Well, we'll still find something fun to do. Cove, no way am I getting in the water. You didn't comment. The decision was already made. That's disappointing. We'll still find something to do, Cove.
Truthfully, there isn't that much we can do on the boat that we couldn't technically do back on land.
Liz nodded.
There's nothing wrong with some non-nautical themed activities. We could play a party game for all I care.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do a party game. You saw her brow furrow for just a moment as she mentally conjured possibilities, then smooth out as one came to mind. Oh, what about the one where something is written down and people give clues and one person has to guess what it is? Sure. I said I'd play a party game and I stand by it. Who's guessing first? We can have an arm wrestling contest to choose. I don't care. You waited for someone to speak. Lee propped her chin on her hand, surveying the group. Jamie, Cove, Liz, then me. Sound good? Her suggestion was met with nods and murmurs of approval. Great! We can get the game going right away! With a devious grin, Lee picked up a pen and notepad from the bar counter. She twirled the glittery pen with her fingers. Lee clarified the rules after Cove raised a wavy eyebrow. Random words would be written down and folded up to give to another player. When it was someone's turn to be a guesser, they would show everyone else the word but couldn't look at it themselves. The other players had to help the guesser figure out what the word was without saying it directly. Each person was allowed to say only one clue. After all the hints were given, then the guesser would have to decide. Lee gave each guest at the mini party a piece of paper from her notepad. It was surprisingly thick-lined paper with a little starfish printed at the bottom. She scrounged around to find more writing implements. She managed to dig up a short pencil with an old jelly grip on it, a ballpoint pen with a logo you didn't recognize, and a purple crayon.
Okay.
Here, pick one. I want the pencil. Sure. You pulled the pencil from the fanned assortment of options Lee had presented to you. The pencil's grip's cool, squishy texture in your grip was distracting but not unpleasant. After the random selection of words were determined, the papers were passed around. It was time to start.
All right.
I guess we know who's going now. You unfolded the paper given to you, careful not to peek while you showed everyone. Liz leaned in closely with a thoughtful hum. As soon as Lee had a chance to read the word, she jumped up. Dog! There's a popular type of dog, sometimes called that. It's where scientists do experiments and stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a secret location. Liz gave Cove an edged look. She probably thought it would confuse you. You gave up and just looked at the paper. You turned the paper around and stared at it with a piercing gaze. In tiny, neat letters, you saw the word lab. Oh. Those clues were terrible.
I really should have gotten that. Well, that makes sense now. Before lab just hadn't come to mind, there was so much information to sort through and nothing had quite fit properly.
No worries, Jamie. It was a team effort. It's not just on you. Let's keep things going. I'm having fun.
Cove flipped open his paper and showed it to the crowd. He kept his hand at the back of the note so he couldn't see the word even if light shone through it. In blocky, wobbly text, you read the word potatoes. You pursed your lips together as you thought what you could say.
Sack!
Liz turned her head with an incredulous expression while Lee continued her thoughts. She jumped up, pointing right at the paper Cove had in his hand.
You put them in a sack.
Cove blinked at Lee, deeply confused. Lee smiled back, full of confidence that he would come to understand eventually.
It's that Mr. Toy with different faces and things.
Cove tilted his head, utterly baffled at the different directions that everyone had taken.
What?
What's a Mr. Toy? Liz simply shook her head at his lack of understanding. It was your turn to try. They're brown and lumpy. There are sweet versions and regular versions. It's a very common starchy root vegetable. You make French fries out of them. You shook your head, not offering a hint. You make French fries out of them. You mimed snacking on a fry, and Lee nodded enthusiastically.
Potatoes. Or a singular potato.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah.
Cove repeated it again with a bright beaming grin. Potatoes. Cove was so cute sometimes you couldn't help but feel happy over his victory joy. He held his hand out to you for a celebratory high five. You smacked his hand back. You gave him a fist bump instead. You gave him a thumbs up. You smacked him. You slapped his hand with a satisfying smack. He nodded, still looking ecstatic.
Thanks for the hint. I don't think I would have gotten it without that. You're welcome. Congrats. Now let's go again.
Suddenly the boat tipped forward before rocking back harshly. The ship must have gone over a bigger than usual wave. Liz held onto her hat desperately. Lee laughed at her immediate death grip.
You never know what'll happen on the high seas.
You chuckled too. Watch out, Liz. You wouldn't want to lose such a nice topper. You felt a burst of nausea come over you. You started feeling really freaked out about being in the middle of the ocean like this. What if the boat capsized? Would anyone find you if it did? You couldn't see anyone nearby on the horizon. Could everyone swim? Could anyone swim in these waves? This wasn't like being near shore. You thought the boat was shaking until you placed a hand on your knee. Apparently, that was just you. You took a quick breath of the salty air and then another. Liz peered out at you from under her rim.
Are you holding up over there?
Lee noticed your condition as well. She spoke up while biting her lip.
How about we hold the next round for now? Are you alright, Jamie?
No. Your arms curled around your stomach. Lee bit her lip and took a step towards you. She nervously waved her hands around as she looked you over.
Do you need to sit down? Lie down? Oh, there's a bed in the interior part of the ship.
No thanks. That sounds good, thanks. You stared at the ground, trying to ignore it all. You nodded your head. I don't know, you felt uncomfortable under everyone's attention. That sounds good, thanks. Right now, you really needed a moment to get a hold of this. Lying down sounded incredibly appealing. Lee smiled carefully. Cove was at your side before Lee could speak again. He wordlessly offered you his arm. His eyes were intense. Even if your neighbor wasn't always such an open book, his intentions would still be perfectly clear right then. He was going to take you somewhere to rest if that's what you needed. You took hold of it. You gripped him tightly. You couldn't reject his support. You needed it. Cove nodded. You had all his attention. Without removing his gaze from you, he spoke out. Which way is the room?
It's just past.
These words started to blend together. Your cousin was talking while gesturing, but the meaning of it all couldn't get through the fog forming in your head.
Right.
Okay. Cove's voice was clear to you. He tilted his chin off to the side to where Lee had just pointed. There was no question that you needed to get away from this. With Cove leading the way, the two of you slowly walked over to the room inside the ship. You followed his fate, looking at anything but the edges of the boat. You leaned against him. He held up the weight without complaint. He felt sturdy, which was a small relief in your discomfort. Cove opened a thick door wide, making room for you to get by. It closed behind you softly. Suddenly the noise level dropped. You could still hear the boat rocking on the waves, but much of the background hum cut off. He brought you to the bed and patted the blanket encouragingly. Come on, you should at least sit down. You crossed the room together and you used his arms as a railing when he gently lowered you onto the mattress. Your knees strained when they bent, feeling creaky and fragile. With the bed solidly beneath you, you let out a breath. Are you scared? Yeah. You look like it. It was still difficult to focus, but the familiar sound of Code's uncomfortable chuckle made it through easily. He was trying not to panic. He clapped his hands together once, not knowing what else to do with them. He paused to scan the full length of the room, his head whipped around fast enough to make you dizzy. If there's something I could do to make you feel better, like maybe I could get you a drink? There's gotta be water here and probably juice. There might even be that fancy sparkling water around. I could ask. I don't want you to go. Your words were imploring, almost desperate. You did not want to be left alone right now. He smiled as reassuringly as he could, a silent promise that he wouldn't leave you. I'll stay right here then. I just want you to be okay. He sunk down to the floor with a soft thud. He positioned himself sideways as he scrooched over towards an end cabinet near the bed. He glanced up at you from the ground and settled with his back to the cabinet. He was ready to stay in that spot for the long haul. You heard a distressing creak from the ship. Your eyes darted from corner to corner, not sure what to do to calm down. You clutched at the sheet under you, and Cove placed his hand over yours. He squeezed it, tethering you back from the worst of your panic. We're safe. I promise. I'll make sure we are. You focused on breathing, willing yourself to believe his words. Slowly you zoned out. You weren't asleep, but the world faded from around you. Everything was shut out, leaving you floating a step away from unconsciousness. You forgot you were on a boat. Every now and then a particularly strong wave would jolt you back into the present, but each time you refocused on being calm and became lost in your mind once again. Had it been hours, minutes, days, it felt like forever, but also like nothing. Eventually, your mind caught up with you fully. Resting, Ko's head was tucked next to you against the side of the bed. You only realized after moving, luckily, you hadn't been bothered him. You sighed in frustration that you couldn't go out there. You teared up at how badly you felt and how the trip was ruined. You needed more time to take care of yourself, you accepted. You decided to force yourself to get up. This was enough. You still didn't feel good, but you could still go be social. You did not want to waste this trip. All you needed to do was get out of this bed and convince everyone else that you were fine. You kicked out of bed and tried to sit up, through pure determination alone. Your stomach rocked, but you deliberately ignored that. Oh. Cove sprung to his feet upon the abrupt movement. He was startled by your action and hovered by.
What's wrong?
Do you need to use the bathroom or something? Or get some air? I'm alright now. Cove stared at you skeptically. You willed yourself to look perfectly fine. No, you're not. The face you had put on for him slid off to show your displeasure. Cove leaned back and forth thoughtfully. You don't have to push yourself. You glared at him, but he didn't budge. With a sigh, you laid back on the bed. You knew he wouldn't be convinced. Cove's lip quirked into a small smile as you settled back in. You stared up at the ceiling. No matter how hard you tried, you could still feel the waves knocking into the boat.
Hey.
Hey. Your gaze rolled over towards him. Cove watched you with a gentle face, and he tilted his head towards the side table. Wanna play hangman? Dumbstruck, you watched Cove reach up behind himself and retrieve a little guest notepad and pencil from the tabletop. He placed a piece of paper on the floor and started scribbling on the sheet without waiting for an answer. But don't think I'll take it easy on you. Cove looked up with a beaming smile. If you don't want to stretch your arms, I can write your stuff down too. You shook your head. I can play like normal. Cove chuckled with a soft edge of anticipation. He was ready for a game. Then let's play. I picked the phrase already. You can start guessing. You squinted down at the page. He lined out for 3 words. 2, 2, and 4 letters each. Enter 1 letter of the alphabet. Two, and 4 letters? No, sorry. You repositioned yourself, but noticed Cove's gaze start to stray. He scratched the back of his neck. You know... Cove slowly lifted his eyes. There was something in his face, the way he looked at you, that made your skin warm. We used to play little pen and pencil games like this when we were younger, remember? You nodded slowly. Yeah, like the time you called me cute through Hangman. Yep, that's what I was thinking of. Shyly, he dropped his head down. You blushed and your heart skipped a beat just thinking about it all over again. Enter one letter of the alphabet. That's a point for me. You rested deeper into the pillow, feeling some chills come over you. Cove reached up to run a hand down your hair as he rested his forehead against yours. You nuzzled back against him. You shared an intimate moment, staying as close to him as you possibly could from your position on the bed and him sitting on the floor. Hey, Jamie, you know the drawings you used to have hanging in your room? The ones you made as a kid? Yeah? Did you keep any of them, like, in storage or something? I did keep them. I did keep them. Why are you asking? Curious, you instinctively leaned a bit forward. Cove smiled charmingly. I've always admired your ability with a crayon. I just wanted to see them again. Oh? Chuckling, you felt your face grow red. Cove's smile widened. I'll try to find them for you. Thank you for appreciating them. No, I don't want you to look at them. I'd rather make something new for you to look at. I'll try to find them for you. Really? Yeah, they're around the house somewhere.
Thanks.
Thanks. Chuckling, Cove looked back at the paper. He held it up. You at least have to admit your skills back then are still better than mine are right now. This time you looked closely at the crudely drawn game board and tried to fight back a laugh. But it was futile. You both burst into a small fit of giggles at that. When you could breathe normally again, you resumed the game. You got one. Do you remember that time you got into a big fight with Lizzie? Cove's gaze slowly rolled over to you. He snorted derisively. Which one? We were playing house, and you two kept butting heads on how to do it. Oh. Surprised, Cove sat up straighter, and his eyebrows furrowed. You could tell that he was searching for the memory. That was a long time ago. It was one of our first play dates all together. You got so upset you stormed out. Lizzie tried to lie about what happened, but I told my mom's how she was acting. Then she had to call and apologize. Wow. My hero all along. As you both sat there quietly with your thoughts, a distant look marred Cove's face. Getting upset and running away was something I used to do a lot, huh? When we first met, I was hiding from my dad. I do the same with when Lizzie and I would fight. Used to was kind of a generous phrase, considering everything. How about the way you ran out when I was over for dinner? You sort of secretly ran away to my room when your dad invited your mom over. I mean, that's true. He ran a hand through his hair, which was better than the other type of running he was prone to. My mom was too right. Maybe I should work on that. There was no stopping the laugh that burst from you. Cove narrowed his eyes, but there was a small, playful look shining there. You better take your turn before I decide to run away again. The corner of his mouth pulled into a bent smile, and you immediately matched it. You picked up the pencil to keep playing. Okay, okay. Good guess. In a simple handwritten letters was the message, "It is okay." Stunned, your eyes slowly trailed up to his. That's what you wanted to say? Cove averted his gaze for a moment. His cheeks grew pinker, but slowly his expression grew more serious. He turned back to you. Cove reached up and caressed your cheek. His touch was feather light, and you leaned into it.
It's okay.
It is okay. You hugged him, you laughed, your eyes teared up. You kissed him. You brought a hand up to caress the side of his jaw and pressed your lips to his. All the tension in your body melted away. Your smile was beaming when you two parted. I love you, Jamie. Thank you. You're such a lovely person. I'm really lucky to know you. It was a good game. I love you too. Cove smiled softly, letting the moment linger. Eventually, a light tapping at the door caught your attention. It slowly opened and Lee popped her head in, giving a little wave.
Hey! How are you holding up?
I'm okay. Not good. I feel like shit. You stared blankly at her. You shrugged from your spot on the bed. I feel like shit.
That bad, huh?
You knew you weren't going to shake every bit of this until you were solidly on land again.
Is there anything I can get you or do?
You paused, but you couldn't think of anything that would make it better. You shook your head and Lee nodded.
Okay.
Lee rubbed her hands together. You raised an eyebrow, knowing her well enough to tell that she was preparing herself to say something.
Well, I talked to the captain, and it's no problem for us to swing back to the mainland sooner than the usual schedule. We're already on our way, if that helps.
Thank you. Thank God, we're gonna be out of here. You don't have to do that. He looked away without saying anything. Thank you.
And you wholeheartedly meant it.
Knowing that you'd soon be off this boat renewed your strength. You could hold on a little longer. Lee grinned, looking relieved.
We had to be back before nightfall anyways. It's no big deal to head back now.
That's cool. Really cool. Thanks, Lee. His expression was hopeful. Cope was as eager for you to feel better as you were. He placed a gentle hand on your shoulder, giving it a reassuring squeeze. Jamie, let's go home. A snorted laugh escaped Lee instantly. She turned away with her hand covering her mouth, but a few more giggles shook her before she looked back.
I didn't know you two moved in together.
Cope's brow furrowed as his expression slipped into a displeased frown. He didn't move to face Lee, but instead he decided to lean a bit closer to you. Just ignore her. You know what I meant. Your mouth curled into a delicate smile. Yeah, let's go home. Well, my house is practically your house too, Cove. Come on, I can't just pretend that kind of slip-up didn't happen. Your hardly a neighbor rolled his eyes as Lee roared with laughter again, clapping her hands.
Are you two done yet? You know what I meant.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then Lee shifted the weight on her feet like she was antsy.
Sorry.
Hey, Jamie. I really am sorry about today. I didn't mean to invite you out on a boat that would make you feel like garbage. I'm sorry I ruined the trip. I can forgive you for such a slight against me personally. You're welcome. How could you have known this would happen? I'm sorry I ruined the trip. No one needs to be sorry for this. No one did anything wrong. Looking relieved, Lee's eyes brightened. With things truly settled, you started to feel better than before already. The rest of the boat ride went by peacefully. Everyone agreed to let you rest as much as possible until it docked at the harbor once more. Finally, the time came and you were able to disembark. The sun was still setting along the horizon during the long trip back to Sunsetburg. You blinked dozily, watching the fading rays coming through the car window. You turned your head to spy on Cole from your spot in the back seat. You wondered what he was thinking. Cole's focus was completely absorbed in driving home. An affectionate warmth fluttered in your chest at the simple sight of your neighbor. You were grateful that Cove was there today. Now that you were safely back on land, you were feeling more at ease. Your eyes were growing heavier from the exertion today. But even though the trip didn't go as planned, it wasn't all bad. There were nice moments that made all the trouble worth it. The people you cared most about cared for you just as much in return. A big yawn rumbled through you and left your eyes in a tired squint. Rolling your head to look out the window once more, you watched the scenery pass on by, growing more and more familiar as home came closer. You'd be back soon, and you smiled, thinking about what an adventure the day turned out to be. You truly ventured out to sea, and you'd returned alive. As far as you were concerned, that was quite a victory. I'm gonna save it there. Thank you for joining me. See you next time. Bye. Peace.